$100 million, 5 years. A 20-year-old from the Philippines who has not yet won a Grand Slam. Let that land for a second. Let it actually register, because Nike just made the loudest, clearest, most unambiguous business statement in women's tennis in a very long time. And if you think this is just about money, you are missing the entire story. This is about power. This is about vision. This is about a brand that did not build itself into the most dominant force in sports marketing by making careless decisions, planting its flag, and telling the world exactly where the future of women's tennis is heading. And the destination has a name. It is Alex Eala. This is confirmed. This is not speculation. This is not a rumor circulating on social media that needs to be verified.
Nike has confirmed a $100 million endorsement deal with Alex Eala spread across 5 years. And once you understand what has been building behind the scenes for months, once you see the full pattern of what Nike has been doing quietly and deliberately, that number stops being shocking and starts being completely inevitable. Because this deal did not come out of nowhere. It is the final piece of a picture that Nike has been assembling with surgical precision. And the picture it reveals is stunning. Let's go back and look at what Nike has actually been doing with Eala, because the trail of decisions is extraordinary and it has been hiding in plain sight. When Eala made her Wimbledon debut last year, Nike did not simply send her onto the grass in a standard white kit like every other player walking through those gates. They gifted her a custom hair tie designed in the shape of the sampaguita blossom, the national flower of the Philippines. Stop right there. A custom hair tie, a culturally specific, identity-celebrating, heritage-honoring detail for a player making her debut at the most prestigious tennis tournament on the planet. That is not a standard sponsorship arrangement. That is not what happens when a brand views an athlete as just another name on a roster. That is what happens when a brand has already decided that this particular athlete is something categorically different from everyone else they work with. And then Nike went further. They commissioned a limited edition shirt designed by Filipino artist Georgina Camus. The design featured the national flower of the Philippines overlaid on the iconic grass courts of the All England Club, a limited edition, globally released artist-designed piece of clothing for a player who, at the time of its release, had not even played a WTA final. Read that again and let it sink in. Nike released a culturally personalized, limited edition garment to the global market for Alex Eala before she had lifted a single major trophy, before the ranking had reached its peak, before the world outside of tennis circles fully understood what was coming. Nike saw it, Nike acted on it, and Nike committed to it in a way that goes so far beyond a standard endorsement deal that the comparison almost doesn't make sense. Now, here is the question that has to be asked, and it has to be asked directly. When was the last time Nike did any of this for Aryna Sabalenka? When did Nike commission an artist from Belarus to design a culturally personalized collection celebrating Sabalenka's roots and identity? When did Nike gift Sabalenka a custom accessory tied to her national heritage for a tournament debut? When did Nike release a limited edition garment to the global market with Sabalenka's story at the center of it? The answer to every single one of those questions is the same. They did not. And that is not an oversight. That is not an administrative gap or a scheduling conflict or a missed opportunity on someone's to-do list. That is a deliberate strategic choice, and the implications of that choice are impossible to ignore once you see them clearly. Sabalenka is the world number one. She has 3 Australian Open titles. She is one of the most physically dominant and technically gifted players the WTA Tour has produced in a generation. She is a legitimate all-time great in the making, and Nike still has her under contract. But there is a critical distinction that the numbers and the headlines have been obscuring, and it is time to state it plainly. There is a massive difference between being sponsored by Nike and being prioritized by Nike. Sabalenka has the sponsorship, Eala has the priority. The custom cultural gear, the dedicated artist collaborations, the personalized outfits, the global ambassador positioning, the high-profile visit to Nike World Headquarters in Oregon earlier this year, where she walked those halls not as a passing athlete, but as the living, breathing face of where this brand is pointing in tennis. And now, on top of all of it, a confirmed $100 million deal over 5 years that makes the entire pattern impossible to dismiss. Here is what you need to understand understand about how Nike operates, because this matters enormously to understanding why this deal makes complete sense. Nike did not become the most powerful sports brand on the planet by spending money emotionally. Every dollar they commit, every campaign they design, every athlete they elevate above the field around them is a cold, calculated, data-driven business decision. They do not invest $100 million in a 20-year-old because they like her personality or because she plays an attractive brand of tennis. They invest $100 million because they have done the math. And the math, when it comes to Alex Eala, points in one very specific and very lucrative direction: the Asia-Pacific market. We are talking about billions of consumers across the Philippines, Japan, China, South Korea, and Southeast Asia as a whole. Markets that are expanding rapidly in purchasing power and sports consumption, markets where global brands are fighting ferociously for cultural relevance and consumer loyalty. And in those markets, Alex Eala is not merely popular, she is beloved. She is a national phenomenon in the Philippines in a way that transcends sport entirely. She is a cultural touchstone for an entire country that has been waiting decades for a moment exactly like this one. Tennis 365 noted that her popularity may already make her the single most attractive sponsorship option on the entire WTA tour. Sky Sports presenter Gigi Salmon said directly that in terms of appeal and the crowds that follow her, Eala might already be the biggest star in women's tennis, not the best player statistically, the biggest star, and Nike has always understood that distinction better than anyone else in this business. Titles win trophies, stars sell products, and right now, Alex Eala is selling a dream to an entire continent. Look at what happens wherever she plays. Fans fly in from the Philippines specifically to watch her compete. They stay awake through the middle of the night to follow her matches in real time from thousands of miles away. They fill the stands in Auckland, in Abu Dhabi, in Dubai, in Indian Wells, in Miami. The stadiums change when she walks onto a court. The camera finds her more. The social media numbers move in ways that analysts pay serious attention to. And here's what makes all of that genuinely remarkable. None of it was manufactured. None of it was engineered by a marketing department with a strategy deck and a budget line. It grew entirely from the ground up, organically, because of who Eala is, because of her story, her warmth, her talent, and the weight of what she represents for millions of people who see themselves in her. Nike is not creating that energy. Nike is positioning itself to own it. $100 million is the price of that ownership, and by any reasonable measure, it looks like a bargain. Now consider what happens when Eala starts actually lifting Grand Slam trophies. Because right now, at just 20 years old, she has already beaten Grand Slam champions. She took down Iga Swiatek at Miami in March 2025, dismantling the five-time Grand Slam champion 6-2, 7-5. She knocked out Madison Keys and Jelena Ostapenko in the same run. She entered that tournament on a wild card and reached the semifinals. She climbed to a career-high ranking of number 29 in the world, making her the highest-ranked Filipino player in WTA history. She won the Guadalajara 125 Open in September, becoming the first Filipina in history to lift a WTA-level trophy, and she did it after dropping the opening set 1-6 in the final before fighting all the way back to claim it. Rafa Nadal posted congratulations. Back in Manila, people who had never followed tennis in their lives were saying her name out loud, and she is 20 years old. She is still developing physically, still adding weapons to her game, still learning how to navigate the biggest stages and the biggest moments in this sport. The ceiling for Alex Eala is genuinely unknown, and that unknown is precisely the point. Nike is not paying $100 million for what she has already accomplished. They are paying it for what they can see coming. They are buying into the future of women's tennis at the exact right moment, locking her in before the story reaches its biggest chapters. That is not reckless spending. That is visionary investing. That is how the best brands operate. They do not wait for the story to be finished and then try to associate themselves with it after the fact. They recognize the story while it is still being written, and they get in early. Nike got in early with Alex Eala. The $100 million confirmation is the receipt. And Aryna Sabalenka is watching all of this unfold. The custom kits that were never made for her, the limited edition cultural collections that never carried her name, the artist collaborations that never reached back into her heritage. the headquarters visits that were never staged as a global brand moment, the $100 million deal that went to someone else. None of this means Sabalenka is being abandoned. She will remain sponsored. She will keep winning matches and competing at the absolute pinnacle of this sport for years to come. She is a world-class athlete who has earned everything she has achieved through relentless hard work and genuine brilliance. But in the specific arena of Nike's creative energy, Nike's cultural investment, and Nike's largest financial commitment in women's tennis, the decision has been made. It was not a close call. It was not a narrow margin. Alex Eala won that competition completely, and the gap between how Nike treats her and how Nike treats everyone else on the women's tour is the clearest possible evidence of that. Think about what this deal actually signals to the rest of the WTA tour. Think about what it says to the players currently sitting above Eala in the rankings. Nike just looked at the entire field of women's tennis, evaluated every athlete on that tour, weighed the titles and the rankings and the career accomplishments, and then pointed at a 20-year-old from Quezon City who hasn't won a Grand Slam yet and said, "You are worth $100 million over 5 years." That is a statement. That is a declaration. That is Nike drawing a straight line from where women's tennis is right now to where it is going and telling the world exactly who they believe will be standing at the center of it. The commercial logic is airtight. The Asia-Pacific market is not a niche opportunity. It is a generational one. The Philippines alone represents tens of millions of passionate, emotionally invested fans who are following every match, every ranking update, every tournament appearance that Eala makes. Multiply that across the broader Southeast Asian region and the broader Asia-Pacific consumer base, and you begin to understand the scale of what Nike is actually buying. They are not just buying an athlete, they are buying access to an entire geography of consumers who feel a personal connection to this young woman that no marketing campaign could manufacture at any price. That connection exists independently. It was built through Eala's story, her journey, her authenticity, and the fact that she is genuinely extraordinary. Nike is simply the brand smart enough to recognize it and bold enough to act on it before the rest of the market caught up. And the timing of this deal is no accident either. The deal comes at a moment when Eala's trajectory is clearly upward, when her clay season is showing genuine development, when she is preparing to make her second main draw appearance at Roland Garros, when she has already demonstrated the ability to beat the very best players in the world on the biggest stages. The Miami run wasn't a fluke. The Guadalajara title wasn't a fluke. The competitive showing against Rybakina in Rome, where she won 2 matches and pushed the world number 2 before losing 6-4, 6-3, is exactly the kind of evidence that tells a brand everything it needs to know about the direction of travel. She is not peaking, she is building. And brands that invest in athletes at the building stage rather than the peak stage are the brands that generate the greatest long-term returns. Nike has positioned itself to benefit from every major moment in Eala's career going forward. Every Grand Slam final she reaches, every title she wins, every record she breaks. Every night she walks onto a center court with millions of people in the Philippines watching in real time, Nike's logo will be on her kit. Nike's story will be intertwined with hers. The limited edition Sampaguita hair tie and the Georgina Camus shirt were not random gestures. They were investments in a relationship. They were Nike telling Eala and telling the world that this partnership is about something deeper than commerce. It is about identity. It is about heritage. It is about the specific, irreplaceable power of an athlete who means something profound to a specific community of people. And now $100 million over 5 years makes that relationship official in the most concrete terms possible. What happens next for Eala under this deal is one of the most compelling storylines in sports right now. She arrives in Strasbourg for her final tournament before the French Open, carrying the weight of a $100 million contract and the expectations of an entire nation on her back. She has spoken openly about wanting to go deeper at Roland Garros this year after a first-round exit last year. She has talked about clay being a surface she is still learning, still building her relationship with, still discovering how to command the way the hard courts came more naturally to her. The Nike deal does not change any of that challenge, but it confirms something about the belief that the people watching her most closely have in her ability to meet it. There are players on the WTA tour right now who have won more than Eala. There are players with higher rankings, more titles, longer track records of consistent excellence at the highest level. And yet Nike looked at all of them and chose her, not because she has done the most, because she represents the most. Because the market she unlocks, the story she carries, the connection she has built with millions of people who had never watched a tennis match before she walked onto a court is genuinely priceless. And $100 million spread over 5 years is Nike's best attempt to put a price on it. She is 20 years old. We are only at the beginning of this story. The Grand Slams are still ahead. The peak ranking is still ahead. The defining matches and the defining moments and the full realization of what Alex Eala can become on a tennis court are still ahead. Nike has made a $100 million bet that all of those things are coming and that they want their brand standing next to her when they arrive. Based on everything we have seen from her so far, based on the trajectory, the talent, the cultural phenomenon she has already become, and the commercial logic of what she represents in the fastest growing sports markets on the planet, that bet looks less like a gamble and more like a certainty. The Sampaguita blossom on a hair tie at Wimbledon. A limited edition shirt designed by a Filipino artist and released to the global market. A visit to Nike headquarters as the face of where the brand is heading, and now $100 million over 5 years. Nike has been telling us this story for months. The deal is simply the moment the story became official. And for a 20-year-old from Quezon City who is just getting started, the most extraordinary chapters are still being written.